Hello everyone, this is Suroj here. Welcome you all to my channel. Today we will discuss about how to access S3 buckets from an EC2 instance over a private network. See here, this is one VPC and within that VPC one public subnet is there and one private subnet is there. And within this private subnet one private instance is there and within this public subnet one public instance is there. And the VPC is attached to one internet gateway. Fine. And the user will connect to the public instance through the internet gateway, and from the public instance the user will connect to the private instance, right? And when the user will be there inside the private instance, the user will try to access S3 buckets or the objects over a private network using gateway endpoint. Fine. And if you have seen here, so this is the route table. So this route table is for this public subnet and this route table is for private subnet. So what we will do, we will implement the same architecture in the AWS console. We are now in AWS console. First of all, we will create our VPC. I will click on your VPCs, create VPC, and I will name this as my VPC, and CIDR block will be 10.0.0.0/16, and I will create the VPC. Now I will go to internet gateway, create internet gateway. I will name this as my IGW and create internet gateway. Fine. Now it is created. I will go to action and attach to VPC, and we'll attach the internet gateway to our VPC, that is my VPC. Attach internet gateway. So now we will create two subnets. One is public subnet, another one is private subnet. So create subnet. We will select our VPC, that is my VPC, and we'll name this as public subnet, and no preference for availability zone. And IPv4 will be 10.0.0.0/17. This is for public, and we'll create another one, that is private subnet, right? So private subnet, and that will be 10.0.128.0/17. This is private subnet. Create subnet. Now I will go to route tables. We'll create one route table. See here, this route table is already created. So this route table is, see the second one, this route table is created for this VPC when we have created the VPC, right? So you see this is my VPC. So what I will do, I will rename this as public route table. Public route table, and we'll go to the routes of this route table. Go to routes, edit routes, and see when the destination is the VPC ID, then the target is local. That means this route is for the internal communication within the VPC. But how the user will connect to the VPC? Fine, how the connection will go over the internet or over the public network. So for that we need to add another route, that is 0.0.0.0/0, that is any network, and the target will be internet gateway, and the internet gateway we have created is my IGW. Save changes. I will go to route tables and we'll create another route table, that is for private subnet. So I will name this as private route table, and I will select the VPC, my VPC, create route table, and if I go to routes, see only one destination is there. This is the VPC ID. That means this route table will be used for the internal communication within the VPC, right? And this route table is the private route table. Fine. So what we need to do, we need to attach our subnet or associate our subnet with the specific route table. Fine. So you see this is our private route table. So with this route table we will associate the private subnet. So I'll select the private subnet and save association. Fine. Now go to route tables and we'll do the same for our public route table, right? So go to public route table, subnet associations, edit subnet association, and we'll select the public subnet. Now we need to create two EC2 instances. The public instance will be there inside the public subnet, and the private instance will be there inside the public subnet. So let's go to EC2, click on instances, launch instances, and I will name this as public EC2. Image will be Amazon Linux 2023 MI, instance type t2.micro, and key pair I will go with proceed without a key pair, and we'll go to the network setting and we'll select our VPC, that is my VPC, and in the subnet you see I have selected public subnet, right? And if you have observed, the auto assign public IP is disabled. Fine, we need to enable it, otherwise we will not be able to connect to the public EC2 instance. Fine, if it does not have any public IP. So for that, what we need to do, we can enable it from this console. Otherwise, what we can do, we will need to go to this VPC console, go to subnets, select the public subnet, action, edit subnet settings, and enable auto assign public IPv4 address. Fine. Now save. It's now saved. Now go to this page and we'll refresh here. See, the auto assign public IP is now enabled. Fine. I will create one security group for this EC2 instance. I will name this as public security group, and I will allow SSH from anywhere, and see, the source type is anywhere, that is fine. It will allow any network from the internet to connect to the EC2 instance through SSH port, that is port 22. Now I will launch the instance. Again I will go to instances, launch instances. Now I will create the private instance, private EC2. Everything is fine, instance type t2.micro and key pair. So this time I will create one key pair for this private EC2 instance. So I will name this as private key, create key pair, and I will download it in the desktop, private key.pem, save, and network setting. I will select our VPC, that is my VPC, and the subnet will be private subnet, not public subnet, right? And if you have seen, see, the auto assign public IP is disabled because we do not need any public IP to connect to the private EC2 instance, right? So that is why the auto assign public IP is disabled, and that is expected. And here we will create one security group for this private EC2 instance. So I will name this as private SG, and this time allow SSH from public subnet only. Fine, because we want the public EC2 instance to connect to the private EC2 instance only. No other instances from any other network will connect to the private instance. So here I will go to custom and will mention the CIDR block for the public subnet, that is 10.0.0.0/17. Now I will click on launch instances. I will go to instances. I will connect to the public EC2 instance. Connect. We are now connected to the public EC2 instance. Fine. So I will check whether we are able to connect to the internet or not. So ping google.com. It's replying. That means our public EC2 instance is now connected to the internet. Fine. So what we need to do right now, we will connect to the private EC2 instance from the public instance. Now we need to log into the private EC2 instance. So for that, what we need the private key. So we will create the private key file. It is start private key.pem. The name will be same as the key pair we have created while we have created the private instance, right? So touch private key.pem, and we'll copy the content to this file. So this is private key.pem. I will open it with notepad, copy it. I will go here and vi private key.pem. We'll go to insert mode. We'll press I and paste. Fine. Escape :WQ. So cat private key enter. See the content. Okay, now it is fine. So now I will change the permission to read only. chmod 400 private key. Fine. ls-l. File is there and the permission is read only, right? So now we will try to connect to the private instance using SSH. So SSH-i, the key name, private key.pem. Now the username EC2.user @ the private IP address of the private EC2 instance. This is the private IP. Copied it. Paste. Yes. See, we are now connected to the private EC2 instance. To reconfirm, we will check the IP address, that is 10.0.139.118. 10.0.138.118. This is for private EC2 instance, right? Now we will check whether this private EC2 instance is able to connect to the internet or not. Fine. So for that I will go to ping google.com. It's not pinging. Fine. That means it is not connected to the internet. But still it will be able to access our S3 buckets, whichever is there in our AWS account. Fine. So for that we will create one S3 bucket in our account. So I'll go here, we'll search for S3, create bucket. I'll name this as Suroj demo, create bucket. Now you can see Suroj demo, this bucket is there. I'll go to the private instance, and now what I will do, I will write the command to list all the S3 buckets in this AWS account. So AWS S3 ls. See, unable to locate credentials, you can configure credentials by running AWS configure. What does that mean? That means the private EC2 instance does not have the permission to list all the S3 buckets present in our AWS account. So for that, what we need to do? We need to attach one IAM role to the EC2 instance. I will go to IAM, go to roles, create role, and here I will select EC2. Next, and here I will search for S3 full. See, Amazon S3 full access. So what I will provide? I will provide S3 full access to the EC2 instance. So I will name this as EC2 S3 full access. So this is the name of the role which will be attached to the EC2 instance. So create role. Role is now created. Now I will go to the instance console, private EC2. I will go to action, security, modify IAM, and I will select EC2 S3 full access. Fine. Now update IAM role. Now the IAM role is attached to the private EC2 instance, and now the EC2 instance should able to list all the S3 buckets present in our AWS account. Now I will go inside the private instance. See, I'll write AWS S3 ls again. Still it is not working, but this time it is not showing the permission error. That means it is trying to list all the S3 buckets, but it is unable to connect to the internet. Then how it will list all the S3 buckets in this account? See, in this diagram, the instance, the private instance is trying to connect to the S3 bucket over a private network using a gateway endpoint. Fine, because first time when we have not created the gateway endpoint, it was trying to connect to the internet gateway, and from the internet gateway it was trying to connect to the S3 bucket, but it was not happening because at the security group level and in the route table level it was not provided, the path was not provided to connect to the internet. Fine, so that is why what we need to do, we need to create one gateway endpoint first. I will go to VPC console. So here I will search for endpoint. Here it is endpoints. Create endpoint, and I will name this as my endpoint, and I will search for S3. See, this is gateway endpoint. See, okay, and now I will select VPC. So my VPC. Remember one thing: the gateway endpoint is not associated with any specific subnet, but it is associated with a VPC. So we have selected our VPC, and with which route table it should be attached? With the private route table, because you see the EC2 instance within the private subnet will be trying to connect to the S3 bucket. Fine. So that is why the gateway endpoint should be associated with the route table, which is attached to the, or which is for the private subnet, right? So that is why we have selected private route table. So I will create the endpoint. Now I will go to route tables, and we'll go to the private route table, and we'll check the routes, edit routes. See, previously the local route was there, and this route, the destination and this target, it has been attached automatically. So what is this? This is the target. That means this is the endpoint ID. If we try to match this, you will be able to see that this is the gateway endpoint ID we just have created. Fine. And what is this? This is the prefix. So when you create a gateway endpoint, you select the VPC route tables. For the subnets you enable, the following route is automatically added to each route table that you select. The destination is prefix list for the service owned by AWS, and the target is the gateway endpoint. Remember that the prefix lists are specific to a particular region. So this prefix list will may be different for different regions. Fine. So I'll cancel this. Now what I will do, I will try to list all the S3 buckets present in the AWS account. Now I will do the same again. Connect. See, it is now showing all the buckets present in our AWS account. So I will list all the objects whichever is there inside Suroj demo S3 bucket. So I will go for the command AWS S3 ls S3 colon / the bucket name Suroj demo. See, no file is there, so I will create one file quickly. Touch demo.txt and vi demo.txt. Hello everyone. Now what I will do, I will copy this file to the S3 bucket. So AWS S3 cp demo.txt S3 Suraj demo. This demo.txt file should be there inside Suraj-demo bucket. I will list all the objects inside that bucket. AWS S3 ls S3 colon Suraj-demo. This object is there inside the bucket. Now we will re-verify the same thing in the S3 console. I'll go inside this bucket. See, this file is present and it has been created few minutes before. That's it for now today. We'll see you in the next video. If you really like this video, kindly like, share, comment and subscribe. Bye bye.